I want to encourage you to turn your test into a testimony. If there was ever a good person, it was the Apostle Paul. If ever a bad thing happened to a good person, it's when they threw him in prison in Rome, in the prison that was attached to Nero's palace. It was Nero's personal prison for political prisoners, awaiting torture and death. And that's where the Apostle Paul was. Out of that situation, he tells us another reason why bad things happen to good people. He writes to the Philippians in chapter 1 these words, "But I want you to know, brethren, that the things which happened to me, being thrown in prison, have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel, so that it may become evident in the whole palace guard and to all the rest that my chains are in Christ. And most of the brethren in the Lord, having become confident by my chains, are much more bold to speak the word without fear." What's he saying? He's saying that I am taking this test, this trial, this tribulation, and turning it into a great testimony to further the gospel of Jesus Christ. There are three groups of people that were powerfully impacted because Paul went to prison. First of all, the palace guard, the elite guard of the emperor. Because Paul was a political prisoner and because Christians had been known to break out of jail supernaturally, he was being chained to a Roman guard constantly. Every 8-12 hours, a different guard was chained to Paul. Well, you know the Apostle Paul, he shared the gospel with them. They would be chained to him, they would get saved. Another guard would come in, be chained to Paul, he'd talk to them for several hours, they would get saved. Soon, almost all the elite guard had been chained to Paul and had been saved. One man called it a spiritual chain reaction. The second group of people impacted by Paul's imprisonment were other Christian leaders. Obviously, because of the persecution, they were timid about sharing the gospel. But seeing him in prison, in chain, encouraged them to be more bold, more confident to speak the word of Christ with courage. So they were empowered to share the gospel with more and more people. The third group of people impacted were the Philippians. Think about it. Paul would not have written this letter if he was not in prison. They sent him a care package, and so he wrote them a letter thanking them for their gift. He wouldn't have had the time to write this letter if he hadn't been in prison. But that's not all. Because Paul wrote the letter to the Philippians, thousands, millions of people have been blessed because Paul was in prison and he wrote this letter. Paul turned his test, his tribulation, his trial into a great testimony. I'm challenging you to turn your test into your testimony today.